Last time we talked about whether you could survive your own death by hopping between quantum timelines. Thousands of you had thoughts, theories, and honestly, some pretty heated arguments in the comments. But here's what kept me awake after making that video. If consciousness really can't jump between realities, if each timeline is truly separate, then where do our thoughts actually go when we're gone? Think about this for a second. Right now, you're having thoughts that have never existed before in exactly this way. Your specific memory of your first pet, mixed with your current mood, combined with whatever you had for breakfast, that exact combination of thoughts is happening for the first and maybe only time in cosmic history. So here's the question that's been haunting me. When you die, does the universe lose that information forever, or is there something bigger keeping score? Today we're asking whether the universe itself might have a memory, and if it does, would it remember you? All right, before we go down this rabbit hole, let's get clear on what we're actually talking about. Because when people say the universe is conscious, they usually mean one of two very different things. First option, panpsychism. This says consciousness is baked into the fundamental ingredients of reality. Every electron, every photon, has some tiny spark of experience. Like how mass and charge are basic properties, consciousness might be too. Second option, cosmos is one giant mind, and our individual consciousnesses are just, thoughts that this cosmic mind is having about itself. Now, before you roll your eyes, these aren't fringe ideas cooked up by people who own too many crystals. Serious philosophers and even some physicists explore these concepts because they're trying to solve a genuinely hard problem. How does dead matter create inner experience? But here's what I want you to think about. If either of these is true, and the universe really does have some form of consciousness or memory, what would that mean for your personal memories? Your embarrassing middle school moments, your first kiss, that time you laughed so hard you snorted? Would all of that be preserved somewhere in cosmic storage? Let's test this idea, because if it's true, we should see evidence, and if it's not, well, that tells us something important too. Here's where things get tricky, and it's the same problem we ran into with quantum immortality: scale and specificity. Your memories aren't just floating information, they're incredibly specific patterns of neural connections. When you remember your grandmother's voice, particular neurons in your temporal lobe fire in a precise sequence. When you recall the smell of coffee, your olfactory cortex recreates a ghost version of that sensory experience. This is all happening in about 3 pounds of fatty tissue inside your skull, with signals traveling at maybe 120 meters per second. Now, the universe is roughly 93 billion light-years across. Information can't travel faster than light. So if the universe has a memory system, how does it store the incredibly specific, time-sensitive pattern that is your memory of, say, your 5th birthday party? Think about it this way. Your brain can barely remember what you had for lunch last Tuesday. How is a cosmos supposed to keep track of every human thought that's ever occurred across billions of years and trillions of individuals? But let's be fair to the idea. Maybe we're thinking about this wrong. Maybe cosmic memory doesn't work like human memory. Maybe it's something completely different that we haven't imagined yet. So let me ask you, how do you think a universe-sized mind would actually store memories? What would the mechanism be? Hold that thought, because we're about to test it. Before we can figure out if the universe remembers you, we need to understand what memory actually is. And neuroscience gives us a pretty clear picture. Memory isn't like a video recording. It's more like, imagine if every time you wanted to remember something, your brain had to rebuild it from scattered notes, and each time you rebuilt it, you changed it slightly. Here's the process. Encoding. Your brain converts experience into neural patterns. Consolidation. During sleep, these patterns get strengthened and integrated. Retrieval. When you remember, you're actually recreating a version of the original pattern. This is why your childhood memories feel so vivid, but are probably pretty inaccurate. Every time you remember your 7th birthday, you're not accessing the original file, you're rebuilding it. And each rebuild is influenced by your current mood, recent experiences, and what you've learned since then. So here's the key insight. Memory is not just information storage. It's an active, ongoing process that requires specific biological machinery working in real time. Now, I want you to think, if the universe were to remember you, what exactly would it be remembering? The original experience as it happened, or the constantly changing version that lives in your head? This matters more than you might think, because it determines what we should be looking for as evidence. All right, let's run an experiment I call the memory leak test. If the universe truly has a memory that stores human experiences, then information should persist even when the normal chains of human memory are completely broken. Here's the setup. Throughout history, we've had civilizations that were completely cut off from each other. The Americas before Columbus, Pacific Islands before European contact. Groups that had zero contact for thousands of years. The prediction is, if cosmic memory is real, we should see evidence of shared memories, shared knowledge, or shared experiences appearing independently in isolated groups. Not just similar myths, because those could come from shared human psychology, but specific, detailed information that couldn't have been transmitted through normal means. The result? We don't see this. What we see is exactly what you'd expect from purely local biological memory systems. When civilizations lose their libraries to fire, when languages die out, when oral traditions are interrupted, the information disappears, gone, forever. But wait, you might say, what about Jung's collective unconscious? What about archetypal stories that appear everywhere? What do you think? Do shared myths across cultures prove cosmic memory, or is there a simpler explanation? Here's what I think. Shared stories probably come from shared human nature, not cosmic storage. We all have similar brains, similar basic needs, similar fears. Of course, we'd independently create similar stories about heroes, death, love, and meaning. Remember from our last video, I introduced the 4D signal model, the idea that you're not a thing, but a pattern stretched through time. This applies here too. Your memories aren't just information, they're part of your signal's structure. They're the coordinates that define your unique path through spacetime. If the universe were to truly remember you, it wouldn't just need to store information about you. It would need to preserve the exact causal relationships, the specific chain of experiences that created each memory, the context that gave them meaning, the way they connect to form your unique perspective. Think about your most meaningful memory. Maybe it's a conversation with someone you loved. The memory isn't just the words that were said. It's the way the light looked that day, your mood, what had happened earlier, how it changed you, how it connects to everything else in your life. For the universe to truly remember you, it would need to preserve not just the content of your experiences, but the entire web of relationships that gives them meaning. So let me ask you this. Even if the universe could store information perfectly, would a memory divorced from its causal context still be you? Or would it just be data that happens to look like you? I think this is where most cosmic memory theories break down. They focus on information storage, but ignore what makes information meaningful. Okay, I've been pretty skeptical so far, but let's be fair to the idea. If cosmic memory existed, what would we actually expect to see? Maybe not perfect information transfer, but subtle traces, small leaks in the cosmic database. Think about these experiences. Déjà vu so strong it feels like prophecy. Dreams that feel more real than reality. Meeting someone and feeling like you've known them forever. Thinking of someone right before they call. Now, before you get excited, these things have much simpler explanations. Pattern recognition glitches, confirmation bias, statistical coincidence. Our brains are prediction machines that sometimes misfire. But here's what's interesting. If you were going to look for evidence of cosmic memory, these are exactly the kinds of phenomena you'd investigate. Not because they prove anything, but because they're the kind of subtle anomalies that might reveal deeper patterns. I'm curious about your experiences. Have you ever had a moment that felt like the universe was trying to tell you something? A coincidence so perfect it seemed impossible? Share one in the comments, just one line. What's the strangest synchronicity you've ever experienced? I'm genuinely curious about this because even if these experiences have simple explanations, they might tell us something important about how consciousness relates to the broader world. Here's what I keep coming back to. Maybe the question isn't whether the universe remembers you. Maybe it's whether being remembered matters. If there really were some cosmic hard drive storing every human experience, would that change how you live? Would it make your choices more meaningful or less? Here's what I think. The memories that matter most aren't stored in some cosmic database. They're alive in other people. Every conversation you've had that changed someone's perspective. Every kindness that rippled forward. Every idea you've shared that took root in another mind. When my grandmother died, she didn't disappear. She lives on in the way my mother hums while cooking, the same tune grandmother used to hum. In family stories that get passed down. In habits and phrases and ways of seeing the world that she planted in all of us. That's not cosmic memory. That's something better. It's human memory, fragile, imperfect, but real and living and continuing to grow. So let me ask you, what part of yourself do you hope will outlive you? Not in some universal database, but in the real world, in other people's lives. Take a second to think about that. This connects to everything we talked about in the quantum immortality video. Whether it's hopping between timelines or being remembered by the cosmos, we keep looking for ways to make consciousness permanent, to escape the fundamental fragility of being human. But here's what both ideas miss. The fact that consciousness can end, that memories can be lost, that our individual perspectives are temporary. That's not a bug in the universe. It's what makes each moment, each thought, each connection precious. If the universe remembered everything forever, would anything really matter? If every possible thought existed eternally somewhere, would your specific thoughts have any weight? I think the temporary nature of consciousness is what gives it value. The fact that your exact perspective, your particular way of seeing the world, has never existed before and will never exist again. That's not a tragedy. That's what makes it beautiful. All right, 3 questions for the comments. First, if the universe could save just one of your memories forever, which would it be? 1 line only. Second, what's the strangest coincidence or synchronicity you've ever experienced? Keep it brief. Third, do you think being remembered is what makes life meaningful, or is there something else? This one can be longer. I want to hear your thoughts. I'll pin the most interesting responses, and I'm genuinely curious about your perspectives on this. If this blend of science and philosophy is your thing, subscribe. We're building a community of people who aren't afraid to ask big questions and follow the evidence wherever it leads. Next episode, we're going even deeper. Can consciousness be measured? We'll look at what neuroscience actually tells us about measuring subjective experience and whether we'll ever be able to build a consciousness detector. Also, if you want the research sources I used for this video, or if you're interested in the expert quotes I paraphrased, just comment "sources" and I'll pin them. Until next time, whether the universe remembers you or not, make sure the people around you do. Thanks for watching.